Thank you, President Keel. Thank my friend Jay Inslee for his impassioned presentation, for his leadership. It's been great to work with Jay over the years. We're going to be sorry that he's leaving Congress, but I suspect he might be around in another capacity someplace. Look forward to working with him in whatever capacity he is in. Thank you for being in my hometown with this tremendous gathering. For the first time, you honor us by your presence. It's very important to us. Your strength is important on a variety of levels. We as a nation are all suffering from the historic treatment of Native people. At some level, conflict may have been inevitable between various peoples. But what has been troubling, I think, to us all has been what happened after the peace was supposed to be resolved. It is important that history and treatment continue to be spotlighted because the legacy continues. Even today, Jay's right, there are those who would discount the sovereignty of our Native people. Even today, we are watching some who would seek advantage at your expense. Even today, there are those who would shortchange efforts at remediation and restitution. You have done America, its politicians and powerful interests, a favor by continuing to spotlight history, to demand attention to fulfilling commitments, and pushing back on any effort to undercut sovereignty. That is an advantage that you give to America. There are lots of talk today, you may have noticed, about the 99% and the policies that too frequently benefit the few, sacrificing the interests of the many. Well, you were the original 100%.
There you go. All right.
This was your land. And it's not that there weren't challenges in Indian country before the arrival of Europeans, but in the main, you were able to live in harmony with nature, and on balance, you treated the European interlopers far better than they treated you in return. I have been continued to be troubled in my tenure in Congress that these issues continue. The continued redefinition of treaty lands consigning Native people to some of the most barren and inhospitable areas of the continent, only to have riches discovered and then new terms dictated. A sort of the original violation of consumer protection, one might argue. So you are, in a way, our conscience. You do us a favor to acknowledge the continuing obligation. And I think failure of the federal government to deal with you and your issues in a forthright manner oftentimes are not just wrong, illegal, immoral. It's a false economy. What about the trust settlement issues? We must honor the memory of Eloise Cobell, but watching what has happened, if people had just done the right thing from the outset, everybody would be richer and better off. We wouldn't be tied in knots in litigation. We wouldn't be struggling to reconstruct records long ago lost. I mean, I think we have spent more dodging this than if it had been done right in the first instance. It's a false economy. It is a testimony to your organization, your skill in politics and public opinion, That while so many are being battered by the policies of this Congress and some of their very radical policies, you know, you are doing much better than most. I salute some of my friends on the other side of the aisle, in particular Mike Simpson and Tom Cole, who demonstrate that being fair to the Native American agenda does not require partisanship, although I think that their fairness has at times put them at odds with the majority of people in their party. It hasn't been easy for them. I've gone out of my way to express my support for their efforts, and I hope you continue to do that as well. But you've made your case, you've made a difference, and you've spoken out, whether by litigation, by politics, the court of public opinion, or the weight of history. And I'm here to tell you, based on my 15 years in Congress, you are winning in a way that few other interests are. We've got some big challenges ahead of us. Some of you know I worked for years before moving to the Ways and Means Committee, dealing with issues of transportation in Indian country. A huge issue of economic development, of health, safety, and the environment, to make sure that you have a transportation system that works. One of the failures of our reauthorization of the transportation bill is being able to help you right-size the federal investment. There are those that would unwind years of work in health care reform. We've made some real progress in recent years. But the answer is not to allow some to pour sand in the gears, to try and turn back the clock, to try and unscramble this omelet of health care reform. It's to accelerate it and make sure that we honor the special obligations of Indian health programs. I appreciate what Jay said about the intricacies of internet gambling. But my opinion is that that horse has already left the barn. We have billions of dollars that is being gambled right now in this country, illegally, in ways that don't protect the individuals who are involved. You are subject to unfair competition for people who don't play by the rules, who are not giving back to the community. They're parked offshore. And we need to work together to make sure that when Congress acts, that it does so in terms of a framework that honors the agreements that we have with you and Indian gaming. But I think it is to all our advantage to move quickly to be able to understand what these issues are and reach a common cause so that something doesn't, you know what happens in Washington when they sniff money. And there are billions of dollars that some people think could be available to the federal government and to state and local governments. And you've got this big super committee that is doing something. We want to make sure that what happens there is not at your expense. So I welcome your thoughts about what sort of accord can be reached to make sure that it is truly a level playing field, but nobody's interests are served by having billions of dollars involved in illegal offshore gaming, which is an unfair competitive advantage for what you've worked so hard to achieve. I look forward to working with you to make sure that it is done right. Well, I will just conclude with the notion here that I feel very strongly about, that issues like the gaming issue, the respect for treaties, respect for sovereignty, is not just about legal responsibilities and treaty obligations. I think it's a core moral issue, and it is about sustainability. How can we look our children in the eye if we're not being true to our commitments for the future, if we are not being true to our past, to your past? Just as Native people were in harmony with nature, we need to work with you as we try and change American policies to be more sustainable. You're doing that with energy. You're doing that with natural resources, dam removal, salmon restoration. Understanding that the protection of first foods is not just cultural and religious. It's part of respect for the ecosystem, about sustainability. Well, I don't have any reservations in my district, but I probably represent more Native Americans than anybody in Oregon because of the urban population of Native Americans. And I think we all should keep in mind the obligations to those who are off reservation, or the young people who are growing up on the reservations today who might want to have new challenges in a broader world. We need to make sure that by honoring our obligations, dealing with education, dealing with mutual respect, that we unlock the future for your young people to be able to take full advantage of the dual citizenship, if you will, whether it's in Portland, Oregon, New York City, any place in the world, or back home on the reservation. And that is an area that too often we've fallen short on as well. Well, I deeply appreciate what you are doing with your efforts because you're allowing us to do our jobs better. So we urge you not to back down, not to be quiet, to remain focused on these big issues so that together we can have all our communities more livable and all our families safer, healthier, and more economically secure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Work great,